しい方、ちょっと手を挙げてください。
こちらお願いします。
じゃあこちらよろしいでしょうか。ちょっと縦へとしてみます。ありがとうございます。すみません、止めていいですか。ありがとうございます。
この辺でよろしいでしょうか。いかがでしょう。皆さん、はい、じゃあこの辺でそろそろ戻りまってください。いかがでしょうか。はい。どうぞおかけになってください。
はい。時間ちょっとまだ1分前だな。Welcome to a press conference at the Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan. My name is Teddy Jimbo. I co-chair this committee that organizes all the media events at this club. Actually, I co-chair with the guy sitting next to me, Pio De Emilio. He's also a co-chair of the committee, committee called the Professional Activities Committee. And of course, today's speaker is Mr. Fumio Kishida. He's, of course, one of the candidates who are running for the presidency of the Liberal Democratic Club. And of course, many of you, foreign correspondents, probably know him as a long-serving foreign minister, of course. And just give a very, very brief introduction. He's 64 years old. He was born in 1957. And he's actually a three-generation politician. And in fact, he's coming from a very political family. His cousin, Yoichi Miyazawa, is a member of Upper House, and former Prime Minister Kiichi Miyazawa is actually a great uncle of his. And he's from Hiroshima, 1st District, and he's been elected 9 times since 1993. And he actually lived in New York from age 6 to 9. Actually, he lived in Queens between 1963 and 66. And then he went on to graduate from Waseda University before working for Japan Long-Term Trust Bank for about 5 years. Then he worked for his father, who was a lawmaker. His father was actually a former MITI bureaucrat before turning to a politician. And then he worked for his father for about 6 years or so, and then he was elected in 1993 from the same district that his father had carried. And he has held very senior posts, such as the policy chief of the party, and of course the foreign minister's post. And he ran for the presidency of the party last year in the presidential election after Prime Minister Abe resigned. And somehow he's been regarded as the prime candidate to succeed Abe. But somehow Chief Cabinet Secretary Suga emerged from basically from nowhere, and then kind of stole the prime ministership. And then he is now fully prepared to run for the post once again in this election. So he will make a brief speech for about 10 minutes in Japanese, and we have Konuma Yoriko-san as our interpreter. So she will interpret his Japanese speech. Then we will go to Q&A. We try to take as many questions as possible, so please make your questions short. And if possible, we'd like to take questions from online as well, if we have time. And Mr. Kishida will have to leave here at 3 o'clock sharp. So let's get to it. So Mr. Kishida, じゃあ木田先生、よろしくお願いします。
はい、神保さん、大変ご丁寧なご紹介ありがとうございました。ご紹介いただきました衆議院議員の岸田文雄です。今日は外国特派員協会にお招きをいただき、こうしてお話をさせていただきますこと、心から厚く御礼を申し上げます。
Well, first of all, Mr. Jimbo, thank you very much for those very kind words, introduction. I am Kishida Fumio. I am currently the member of the House of Representatives, and I would like to thank FCCJ for this invitation and giving me this opportunity to talk to all of you. Thank you very much indeed.
ご紹介いただきましたように、私はこの度、自民党の総裁選挙に挑戦することを表明しております。
As was already introduced, I have declared that I will challenge the upcoming LDP presidential election.
今、我が国はコロナ禍の中にあり、国民の声が政治に届かない、あるいは政治の説明が国民の声に響かない、こうした悲痛な声が広がっています。今、政治の信頼が問われている、この政治にとって大変危機的な状況にあると考えています。
Well, currently here in Japan, we are in the midst of a pandemic, and the voices of the people are not reaching the politicians or politics. And also, I think that the explanation given by the politicians are not reaching the people, and there are these outcries against such a situation. I think that trust in politics has been broken, and we are facing a crisis.
そうしたときに自民党の総裁選挙が行われる。私は自民党が国民の声をしっかりと聞くことができる、そして政治の選択肢をしっかり示すことができる政党であるということを示し、もって自民党の信頼回復を図るために、この総裁選挙、立候補を決意いたしました。
So given those circumstances, I think that, and also at this timing, the LDP presidential election is to be held. And I want to demonstrate to the Japanese people that the LDP is a party which is capable of fully listening to the voices of the people. And it is a political party which is capable of presenting to people a variety of options. And I want to make this clear. And so this is the reason why and also restore trust towards the LDP, and this is the reason why I decided to run in the presidential election.
出馬表明の際にいくつかこの私の思いを申し上げさせていただきましたが、まずはこの国民の信頼を回復させるためには自民党自身が変わらなければいけない、自民党改革を掲げました。
Yes, and when I declared that I will be running in the presidential election, I did present some of my thoughts. And I stated that in order to restore trust from the people, the LDP itself has to change. So the LDP has to carry out reform.
自民党が多様性を持ち、また新陳代謝ができる政党であるということを示すためにも、中堅若手を登用する、こうした組織でなければならない。そのために自民党の役員の任期を明確化するということを、その改革の中の中心に据えました。
And in order to demonstrate that the LDP is a party of diversity and capable of replacing old with new, my policy is to try to recruit and use many of the mid and junior the members of the party. And so we have to do this. And also for this purpose, I am thinking of introducing a term limit to the LDP executives. These are the reforms, the centerpiece of my campaign.
その上で3つの政策を掲げました。1つはコロナ対策です。2つ目はアフターコロナ時代の日本の経済です。3つ目として日本の外交安全保障政策です。
And having said that, I have set out 3 policies, and one is the measures against COVID-19, and the other is the economic measures to be introduced to Japan after the pandemic, and the third is Japan's foreign and security policies.
1つ目のコロナ対策としましては、我々が当面目指すのはコロナとの共存、すなわち通常の医療体制でできるだけ平時の社会経済活動を取り戻すことができる、これを目標としました。
Now, in regards to the first point, that is the measures, the response to the pandemic, what we are aiming towards is to be able to live with the coronavirus. And therefore, our aim is to realize a situation where we can cope with the virus with a normal medical service system in place, and also can restore the normal, more or less, economic and social activities. These are the goals.
そうした目標を目指すために、病床確保、あるいは経済対策をはじめ、4本柱として、政策を提案いたしました。その中には、こうした感染症有事に際して、健康危機管理庁といった司令塔組織を作っていくことが大事であるということも盛り込みました。
And so in order to achieve this goal that I've just described, we have to secure enough hospital beds, also introduce economic measures, amongst others. Altogether, there are 4 pillars that have been set out, amongst which I talk about having an agency which is responsible for managing health crisis and in the event of a pandemic like this. And this agency will be functioning as a command tower.
そして2番目の政策として掲げましたのが、アフターコロナ時代の経済です。新しい日本型の資本主義という言葉を使っていますが、要は、従来の新自由主義的な経済政策からの転換を掲げました。
And the second policy, that is the economic measures after the pandemic. And I have used this term, I'm trying to introduce a new Japanese-style capitalism. And what I mean by this is to break from the conventional neoliberalist economic policies.
従来、我が国が進めていた経済政策によって、間違いなく日本の経済は成長しました。拡大した大きな結果は出ました。しかし合わせて、格差を生じてしまった。日本の国においても子どもの貧困などが問題になる格差が生じてしまった。これがこの我が国の経済政策の実情です。そしてそこにコロナ禍、コロナウイルスのこの感染の影響が加わり、我が国の経済社会において格差はますます拡大してしまった、こういった現状認識を私は持っています。
And so looking at the economic policies that Japan has been promoting in the past, for sure, these policies have brought about growth and expansion to Japan. So this was the outcome of those policies. But at the same time, it is true that we have seen disparity amongst people widen as a result of these policies. And even in Japan, there is this serious problem of children's poverty. So I recognize this to be the situation of the economic policies taken so far here in Japan. Added to that, in combination, came the COVID-19 virus, which has had an impact on Japan's economy as well as society, resulting in a widening of this disparity. This is how I see the current situation.
よって、コロナ禍を乗り越えた後、私たちは再び経済を回していかなければなりませんが、その際には、従来と同じことをしていたのでは、さらに格差を拡大してしまう。よって、経済の成長、これはもちろん大事です。しっかり追求しますが、合わせて分配ということも考えなければならないと思っています。
And therefore, once we manage to overcome this pandemic crisis, then of course we have to work effort so that the economy can return to normal and start running again. But if we were to adopt the same old policies as in the past, of course it is important to ensure economic growth. That is important, and I will work towards that end. But at the same time, we will see that the disparity amongst the people will widen. And so we have to think about this disparity. And for this, I'm also proposing distribution.
成長の果実を分配するというのは、すなわち、この皆さんの所得、国民の皆さんのこの所得、給与を引き上げるということです。そして大事なことは、一部の方の所得、給与を引き上げるのではなくして、できるだけ幅広い分野、幅広い地域、できるだけ幅広い国民の皆さんに、この所得、給与を引き上げるという恩恵を受けてもらうということです。
And first of all, growth is important, and as a result, we will see the fruits of growth. And the fruits need to be distributed. In other words, this will be distributed so as to boost the income and wages of the people. And it's important that not only a part of the people see their income or wages increase, but instead a wider sector and also wider regions and a larger number of people should be benefiting and seeing their income and wages increase.
こうした分配を行うことによって、経済の好循環も完成する。また、格差の問題にも向き合い、社会や政治の安定にもつなげることができると思っています。
And by doing so, and by realizing such a distribution, we can create this virtuous circle of the economy, and thereby facing up to this issue of disparity and bringing about good results to the society and politics.
そして、3つ目の政策として外交安全保障を掲げました。この外交安全保障においては、私は3つの覚悟が我が国の外交には求められるということを申し上げました。
And the third pillar is the foreign and security policies. And in this area, I have said that Japan requires 3 determinations or commitments.
一つは自由、民主主義、法の支配、人権といった普遍的な価値を守る覚悟です。
And the first is the commitment or determination to protect universal values such as freedom, democracy, rule of law, and human rights.
国際社会において権威主義的あるいは強権的な政治勢力が拡大する中にあって、ぜひこうした普遍的な価値を共有する国々とともに、この民主主義をはじめとする普遍的な価値を守るために努力をしなければならないと思っています。
Yes, and so looking at the international community, we are seeing the expansion of the authoritarian and dictatorship power influence, and therefore, given this situation, it is necessary for Japan to try to work with those countries which share the universal values that I stated, such as democracy, and we need to work together to try to defend, protect these universal values.
2つ目の覚悟が我が国の領土・領海・領空は断固として守る、こうした覚悟です。
And the second commitment or determination is to make all out effort so as to defend and protect Japan's territory and also its sovereign seas and airspace.
そしてその中にはさまざまな防衛装備の充実に加えて、経済安全保障といった考え方もしっかりと盛り込み、そしてその課題に向けて担当大臣を置き、そして経済安全保障推進法という法律を作る等の提案をさせていただいています。
And also, towards this end, I am proposing not only to enhance Japan's variety of defense equipment, but at the same time to introduce this concept of economic security. I think that this is an issue that we need to include, and for this, I am thinking of putting or placing a minister in charge of economic security and proposing a law named Economic Security Promotion Act.
そして3つ目が地球規模の課題に貢献する覚悟です。
And the third is the determination or commitment to contribute to global issues.
地球温暖化問題、平和、核廃絶問題、防災問題、また感染症問題等、こうした地球規模の課題に貢献をし、そのことによって我が国の国際社会における発言力、存在感を高め、結果として我が国の国益にも結びつけていく、こうした地球規模の課題への取り組み、これが3つ目の覚悟として重要視しているところです。
Yes, and the third, when I say global issues, for example, climate change, global warming, peace, and also the abolition of nuclear weapons, disaster preparedness, dealing with infectious diseases, amongst others. So these are the types of global challenges which Japan needs to contribute to, and by doing so, in turn, Japan will strengthen its voice or presence in the international community, thereby benefiting Japan's national interest. Therefore, it is important for Japan to contribute to the resolution of such global issues. And this is the third commitment that I have.
このようにコロナ対策、経済対策、外交安全保障政策、こうしたことを掲げていますが、こうした政策を通じて私が目指すのは、人と人との絆、社会の温かみの感じられる、こうした国づくりです。
And so I've mentioned these three, which is the anti-COVID-19 measures, also economic measures, and the foreign and security policies. But through these policies, what I aim to realize is to strengthen the bond of people to people here in Japan, and also to create a society where we can feel the warmth of people. This is the sort of nation I would like to build.
自助という考え方、これは大事なことではありますが、コロナ禍を通じて私たちは改めて人は一人では生きていけない、こうしたことを痛感いたしました。
Well, of course, self-help is important, but under this pandemic, once again, I'm reminded that people cannot live alone, and this is something that I strongly feel now.
コロナ対策を通じて国民が協力をしていく、さらには新しい資本主義を通じて、国民の格差にしっかりと目を向けていく、さらには外交安全保障を通じて、私たちの国をしっかり守り、そして国際社会の中で存在感を高めていく、こうしたことを通じて、国民の一体感をしっかりと回復していきたいと思っています。
And therefore, through the anti-COVID measures, we need to ensure that people cooperate with one another. And through the new capitalism, we will have to face up to the issue of disparity. And through the diplomatic and security policies, we need to defend our country and enhance Japan's presence in the international community. And thereby, through these measures, try to restore the unity of the people.
こうした国づくりを目指すことを訴えながら、私は自民党総裁選挙に挑戦をしたいと思っています。国民、あるいは党員に向けてしっかりと発信をしていきたいと思います。以上です。
And so this is the goal that I have in terms of the country that I want to build. And I want to appeal these points through the LDP presidential election that I will be challenging to the Japanese people as well as party members. This is the message that I want to strongly deliver.
Okay. Let's quickly go to Q&A. As usual, please raise your hand, and if you're designated, come up. There are two microphones on both ends of the front desk. And then cite your name and affiliation, no speech, just one question per person, please. So let's, who want to go first? Okay, Moto-kun, go ahead.
すみません。はい。では挙手お願いします。質問者はマイクの方へお願いします。一問一答、ご所属お名前もお願いします。
Kishida-san, thank you so much for coming to meet us today. I'm Motoko Rich with the New York Times. I'm wondering, when you talk about bunpai, in English we hear distribution, but do you actually mean redistribution? And if so, how are you going to accomplish this change in equality or the disparity? Are you calling for a change in Japanese tax policy?
すみません、ニューヨークタイムズのものでございますけれども、先生、今日はありがとうございます。先ほどその分配、英語で言いますとディストリビューションになるんですけれども、本来、正確に言うとこれは再分配、リディストリビューションの方が正確なのではないかと私は解釈をしております。そしてそれによってこの格差の問題を解消していくというお考えだと思いますけれども、具体的なやり方として、例えば、税制を変えるなど、どういった対策を考えていらっしゃるんでしょうか。
はい、ありがとうございます。言葉の使い方については、今、ご指摘がありましたが、再分配という言葉遣いとの比較ですが、私はまず成長が大事だと、成長の果実をしっかり得る、それを分配するということから、再分配ではなくして分配という言葉を使いました。
Well, thank you for your indication pointing out the term redistribution, not distribution. But my thinking is that first we have to realize growth. And the outcome, the fruits of the growth should be distributed, not redistributed, but distributed.
そして分配の仕方には大きく言って民間における分配、そして政府公的な分野における分配、この2つがあると思っています。
Yes, but when we say distribution, I think there are two types of distribution. One is the distribution within the private sector, and the other is the government-led, the public distribution.
まず、従来の新自由主義の政策の中で、よく株主資本主義という言葉が使われました。この企業における成長の果実、株主、経営者が独占をする、こういったことが随分指摘をされてきました。やはりこの企業の中においても成長の果実、従業員をはじめ適正な分配が行われること、そして従業員の所得が、給与が上がるということ、これは大事であると思っています。
Yes, and under the conventional neoliberalism, people often talked about the shareholders' capitalism. In other words, as a result of the corporate growth, the profit that is generated is distributed to the shareholders as well as the management. And these are the people who dominated the fruit of growth or profits. This has been criticized, pointed out, and so I think that even within the companies, there is a need to try to provide those benefits to the employees, and so distribute these profits to the employees so as to raise their income and salary.
そして、民間のこの企業のサプライチェーンの中でも大企業と中小企業、この利益の適正な配分が行われているか、これについても私は自民党の政調会長の時に随分考えましたが、この分配、下請けの法律等を適切に活用することによって適切な分配考えていきたいと思っています。
And also, when we talk about the private companies, there is this supply chain where there are those large companies as well as medium and small-sized companies. And we have to think about the appropriate distribution of profit amongst these companies as well. And when I was LDP policy chief, I've given thought to this. And so utilizing the act for the subcontractors, I think it is necessary to ensure that there is appropriate distribution of the profit.
一方、公的な分配ということにおいては、もちろん税制があります。また、この所得の中間層の大きな負担は、教育費と住居費と言われています。こうした分野におけるさまざまな支援を政策として進めていく。さらには、大都市と地方のこの格差を考えた場合に、この例えばデジタル化一つ進めるにあたっても、この 5G をはじめとするデジタルインフラ、地方に優先的に装備していくなど、さまざまな政策を考えていく、こういったことを通じて公的な分配を進めていく、ということを考えています。
And meanwhile, on the other hand, there is this public distribution. In other words, one would be the tax system and trying to increase the income of the middle income people. Because the middle income class, I think the large part of their burden is on the education as well as housing expenses. And there is a need to try to support these areas. And therefore, I am contemplating promoting policies to provide such support. At the same time, there is this disparity between the large cities and more regional areas. And through digitization, like the deployment of the 5G infrastructure, priority should be given to the more local regional areas so that such infrastructure can be introduced early on and thereby try to promote distribution publicly to these areas.
こうしたさまざまな政策を総合的に進めなければいけませんが、大切なのは目先の利益ではなくして、こうした取り組みを進めることによって、経済の好循環、そして社会の一体感、政治の安定、こういったことにつながるんだということを、できるだけ多くの人たちが思いを共有する、これが大事であると思っています。
Yes, and so of course, these variety of policies need to be carried out, promoted comprehensively. But what's important in this process is not to focus on the immediate profit, the short-term profit, but instead to think about how to realize a virtuous cycle of the economy, how to create the unity amongst the people, and bring about political stability. And I want to see as many people as possible to share this thinking.
じゃあカレンさん。
フランスのラジオフランスとリベラション新聞の特派員西村と申します。本日の記者会見ありがとうございます。国民の声が政治家に届かない。政治家の説明は国民に理解されてないと岸田さんが先ほど指摘しましたが、 民主主義の国々では、その問題を解決するために一つの方法があります。それは国会を開くことです。なぜ数ヶ月前から自民党は臨時国会を開くことを断ったのでしょうか。それは間違いだったのでしょうか。
Well, thank you very much. I am from Nishimura from the French Libération, and thank you very much for attending today. And you have said that the voices of the people are not reaching the politicians. At the same time, the explanations given by the politicians are not understood by the people. But looking at the democracies around the world, I think one of the methods for resolving this issue is to hold the Diet session. And for the past few months, the LDP has rejected convening an extraordinary session of the Diet. Why was this, or what is this a mistake?
今おっしゃったように、国会は大変大事なものです。政府としても、国会を尊重しなければいけない、その通りであります。政府としては、国会を開会して、そして国会において責任のある答弁をし、委員会に対応することが大事であり、一方で、まさにコロナ対策、国民の命や暮らしを守るために、具体的に昼夜問わず、必死になって努力をしなければいけない、こういった責任も負っています。この両方をしなければいけない、これが政府の立場です。
Well, as you rightly mentioned, the Diet is of great importance, and the government needs to respect the Diet proceedings, that is for sure. And also, the government is responsible for convening the Diet and responding to the questions at the Diet session. So we are responsible for responding to the committee's deliberations as well. So these things are very important. But at the same time, currently the government is a position where it has to take measures around the clock to protect the lives and livelihood of the Japanese people. This is another responsibility of the government. So the government has to do both these things.
そして、国会の開会、議論を尽くす、説明を尽くすということについては、閉会中審査という仕組みの中で、厚生労働委員会、内閣委員会、議運営委員会、関係委員会は、この開会をしてきました。国会の議論は行われてきた。それに加えて、そのさらに、国会をこの開会してやることがあるかどうかを、この政府において、そして国会の現場において、しっかり考えていかなければならないと思います。
And so even if the Diet session is not convened, we have this system in place where deliberations and explanations can be given at, for example, the Health and Welfare Committee and Cabinet Committee and the Parliamentary Steering Committee. And so we do have this system in place, even if the Diet session is not held for these deliberations to take place. So in addition to that, there is a need for the government to consider whether there is a need to convene the Diet session so as to carry out discussions. So this needs to be thought out.
そして今現在、まだそれ以上国会を開くという結論には至っていませんが、ただ一つ申し上げたいのは、国会も開かずになんで自民党総裁選挙を開くのかという意見があります。これについては、過去、国会を開きながら総裁選挙をやったことはいくらでもあります。総裁選挙を開くことと国会を開くこと、これは直接は関係ないということだけはしっかり申し上げておきたいと思います。
But currently, the government has not reached the conclusion that there is a need to convene the Diet session. Of course, some people ask why the LDP presidential election is being held while the Diet session is not being held. But looking at the past, there were cases in which there were the LDP presidential elections being held while the Diet was in session. So the Diet session and the LDP presidential elections are not directly linked.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, the lady behind Andy. Sorry, Andy.
香港フェニックステレビのリー・ミャオと申します。今日はありがとうございます。中国の関係についてお尋ねできればと思います。まず、日中関係について、午前中の記者会見も拝見しましたけれども、日中関係について大きなビジョンは、どういうふうに、もし首相になった場合、中国と関係を構築していきたいというふうにお考えでしょうか。そして中国とは今まで戦略的互恵関係であるとか、お互いに協力的なパートナーであるとか、脅威にならないということを日本側が言ってきたんですけれども、これは変更はあるのかどうかということ、そして一帯一路について午前中反対されるような姿勢だったんですけれども、そこはちょっと明確に教えていただけたら。一帯一路について、新中国圏が広がることにつながるということで、日本が毅然とした対応をしなければいけないというふうに述べられましたけれども、そこは明確に反対というスタンスでしょうか。お願いします。
This is Hong Kong Phoenix Television. Lee, I want to ask you about Japan's relations with China. And this morning I was listening to your press conference, and you talked about your vision for the China-Japan relations. And if you were to become Prime Minister, how will you try to build relations with China is my first question. The second is in regards to this, well, also in regards to Japan's relationship with China. There is this strategic reciprocal relationship, cooperative relationship, and not regarding China as a threat, as you mentioned, but still, I think you stated that Japan needs to take a firm attitude against the One Belt and Road policy, because this will lead to China increasing its pro-China sphere. So can you make clear whether you are opposed to the One Belt and Road?
まず日本と中国の関係ですが、隣国同士でもあり、そしてさまざまな国民の交流があり、日本にとって第一の貿易相手国は中国であり、中国において世界第2の貿易相手国は日本であり、こうしたこの関係を考えますときに、中国と引き続き対話を続けていかなければならない、これが基本であると思います。これまでこの中国との間で積み重ねてきた対話の成果、これは引き続き大事にしながら未来を考えていく、これは基本であると思います。
Yes, so I'm talking about relations with China. Of course, China is one of our neighbors, and we have seen Japanese people and Chinese exchanging at the people-to-people level, and also China is our #1 trading partner. For China, Japan is the #2, and and also we have been carrying out a number of dialogues in the past. So my position basically is to continue with such dialogues. At the same time, of course, we have seen these dialogues produce some outcome, and this is important in thinking about the future.
しかし、その一方で、尖閣、あるいは東シナ海での動き、あるいは南シナ海での動きなど、さまざまな動き、さらには自由民主主義、人権、法の支配という観点から、言うべきことは言っていかなければならない。こうしたことも感じています。
But at the same time, I'm looking at the situation in the Senkaku Islands, the developments in the East China Sea, South China Sea, and also given these circumstances, I think that Japan also needs to say what it has to say in regards to, for example, freedom, democracy, human rights, and the rule of law.
そして一帯一路についてですが、私が申し上げたかったのは、一帯一路というのは、単に貿易、経済の拡大というのではなくして、中国には深く考えた国家戦略というものがある、そういったことを日本、他の国もしっかりと頭に置きながら、どのように対応していくのかを真剣に考えるべきだということを申し上げました。決して反対といったつもりはありません。
Well, and in regards to your question on the One Belt and Road, I believe that what I wanted to say was that this is not just a policy regarding trade and economy, but instead it is a well thought out national strategy on the part of China. And so Japan and other countries need to keep this in mind in seriously thinking how to respond to this initiative. I did not state that I am opposed to the One Belt and Road initiative.
日本がどう対応するのか、そして他の普遍的価値を共有する国がどう対応するのか、真剣に考えていかなければいけない、そういう問題提起をいたしました。
So I just raised this issue for Japan to think about how it will respond to this, and also other countries which share universal values with Japan also need to think seriously about how to respond to this initiative.
Okay, Richard, go ahead.
Richard Lloyd Parry of The Times. Thank you for coming today. Do you think that Japan should continue its apologies for its conduct during the Second World War? And if you were Prime Minister, would you worship at Yasukuni Shrine? And the second very short question, do you believe that Asia is entering a new Cold War?
はい、リチャード・ロイド・タイムズであります。まず一つ目ですけれども、日本は引き続き大戦中に行ったその行動に対して謝罪を続けるべきなのでしょうか。そしてまた、総理大臣になられたならば、靖国参拝をされますでしょうか。それからもう一つ端的にお聞きします。アジアは今、新たな、冷戦に入ってきているんでしょうか。
はい。1点目の質問ですが、我が国の先の大戦に対する思いですが、私が外務大臣を務めている間、安倍内閣としても戦後70年談話という談話を取りまとめました。この談話は大変重たいものがあると思います。基本的には談話の線に沿って国際社会に引き続き日本の思い、考え、しっかり訴えていかなければならないと思います。靖国を参拝するかという、ごめん、一つ
すみません。はい。First of all, in regards to your question about whether Japan should continue to apologize for its conduct during the war, when I was foreign minister under the Abe cabinet, the statement was issued to mark the 70th anniversary after the ending of the war. This statement carries weight, and in principle, Japan will continue to follow what was written in that statement. These are the thoughts of Japan that it has communicated to the international community. And moving on to your second question about Yasukuni.
靖国の問題については、私は国のために尊い命を捧げた方々に対して尊崇の念をしっかり示していくということは、政治家にとって大切な姿勢であると思います。
Well, in regards to Yasukuni, I, as a politician, believe that it is important for a politician to express his or her respect to those who perished and sacrificed their precious lives for the country.
そしてその尊崇の念を示し方については、このそれぞれの政治家、それぞれの人間がそれぞれ考えていくことであります。私はこの総理大臣なり、それなりの立場に立った場合には、その立場に適切な尊崇の念の示し方を考えていきたいと思っています。
But when it comes to how to express one's respect to those, the war dead, as a politician, each and every individual has to think on his or her own. And so if I become Prime Minister, I will think about what will be appropriate for me to do to express my feelings as Prime Minister.
そして冷戦かどうかということについてですが、これは見方、さまざまなものがあると思います。かつての冷戦とは、米ソ冷戦と今回の米中の関係、 これはこの状況は随分異なっていると思います。
Well, in regards to your question on the Cold War, I think there are different ways of looking at this, but the situation is quite different from the days of the U.S.-Russia or Soviet Union Cold War, this relationship between the United States and China.
かつての米ソは、軍事力においては米ソはしのぎを削っていましたが、経済力においては米国はソ連を圧倒的に凌駕していた。こういった状況の中での対立でありました。
Because back in those the Cold War period, the confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union militarily, they were more or less at par with one another. But when it came to the economic power, the United States was overwhelming the Soviet Union.
今回、今の米中の関係、これは軍事力においても中国は米国と対抗すべきその拡充を図っている。経済力においても米中はこのその中国大変大きなその大国としての姿を示している。こういった状況の中で米中がどう向き合うのか、これからの向き合い方によってその評価は変わってくると思っています。
But currently looking at the U.S.-China relations militarily, in terms of the military power, China is expanding its military power so as to be able to compete against the United States. Also, when it comes to the economic power, again, China is working so as to become a major power. And so the situation, given the situation, how the United States and China will face each other will determine how this relationship will be assessed.
Okay, we're running out of time. I just want to give opportunity to non-members. How about Mochizuki-san, you want to go? Go ahead.
東京新聞の望月です。お願いします。日本学術会議法の任命を拒否した昨年の菅さんの対応についてお聞きします。昨年9月にですね、6人の推薦候補者を菅首相が初めて首相として拒否をいたしました。これに対して学術会議側はあらゆる学術会議法、そして憲法23条、学問の自由を侵害している行為だと強く批判しており、しっかりと理由の説明ができないのであれば任命拒否を撤回すべきだと求めています。このことについて岸田さんの今後首相になったとき、任命拒否についての撤回ということを考えるのかどうか教えてください。ご存知のように1958年の大臣答弁以来、一貫して菅さんになるまで学会から推薦したものを拒否しない形だけの任命をしていくということが貫かれていました。どうぞこの見解をお聞かせください。
はい。まず
いいですか？This is Tokyo Shimbun newspaper. Mochizuki, I would like to ask you about the Science Council and the nomination of the members of the Science Council, Japan Science Council. Prime Minister Suga, back in September last year, rejected the nomination of 6 of the new members, and the council side rejected that this is not acceptable, and this is a violation of the freedom of academic studies, and also this was in violation of the law, Article 23. And and ever since 1958, the ministers have been taking a position where these new nominated members will not be rejected. But yet Suga-san rejected the nomination. So if you were to become prime minister, will you continue to reject these nominations? What position will you take?
はい、まず結論から言いますと、人事の撤回は考えません。そして、ただこの人事というもの、この人事の理由の説明というのはなかなか難しいものがあるものの、やはりこうした問題についてのさまざまな指摘についてはしっかり考えを述べなければならないとは思います。その上で、今後、学術会議のありようについて議論も進んでいます。 今回の件も踏まえながら、この学術会議のありようについての議論は進めていくべきだと思います。以上です。
Well, to give you the conclusion, first of all, I will not withdraw the rejection that has been made in September. But when it comes to these personal issues, it's very difficult to explain the reasoning why the decision was made. And yet, I think that the Prime Minister and the government should listen to the criticism and the points that have been raised as a result of this decision. And ever since there have been deliberations on the Scientific Council of Japan and what modality is desirable. And therefore, I think it is important to continue such discussions to think about the future of the Council.
Okay, now my colleague Pio is going to read some of the questions came in online, and also he has his own questions. So go ahead, Pio.
Thank you. ピオからオンラインで来ている質問を読ませていただきます。
Well, we have several questions online as a tradition now. We are asking them to. Please, Kishida Sensei, make a very short answer because this is a very easy one. Yes or no, kind of. If you become Prime Minister, would you request a meeting with Kim Jong-un, either in a bilateral summit or perhaps as a multilateral summit?
はい、これ短いイエス・ノーで答えられる質問なんですけれども、総理大臣になられたならば、金正恩と1対1の倍の首脳会談、ないしはマルチの首脳会議に応じられますでしょうか。
はい、まず北朝鮮政策については、バイデン新政権の北朝鮮政策を確認した上で、その中で必要であれば、我が国も対話等の汗をかくことは考えなければならないと思います。ですから、米朝関係、その2つの国の間のさまざまな政策全体を見る中で、日本の役割を考えていきます。その選択肢として排除はいたしません。
Well, yes, in regards to the North Korean policy, first of all, I would like to confirm the new Biden administration's policy vis-a-vis North Korea. And if necessary, I am willing to make effort to try to hold such a dialogue. But first, I think it is necessary for us to understand the relationship between the United States and North Korea and look at the policies there and think about the total picture, and based on which Japan should be thinking about what role it can play. And so I will not exclude such a possibility.
Okay, the next question is also very quick one. It's just a hypothesis at this time. If US or G7 countries will demand Japan to boycott Beijing Winter Olympic Games, how would you react?
はい、これもシンプルかもしれません。もしアメリカ、ないしは G7 の他の国々が日本に対し、北京冬季オリンピックをボイコットしてほしいというふうに言ってきたならばどうされますか。
最終的には我が国の中国との関係、あるいは地政学上の立場、そういったものを総合的に判断して、我が国が判断をいたします。
Well, ultimately, Japan will think about its relations with China, think about our geopolitical position, and comprehensively make a judgment on its own.
我が国にとりまして、中国との関係は独自の重要性があると思っています。
Because I believe that Japan's relations with China has its own unique importance.
Okay, this is a question from Eric Johnston, Japan Times, on energy. Your competitors, Ms. Takaichi and Mr. Kono, have opposing views on nuclear power in this country. Takaichi wants more nuclear power plants, while Mr. Kono indicated that he doesn't favor more nuclear plants and sees nuclear power in Japan as eventually fading out. Where do you stand between these two positions?
はい、もう一つオンラインですけれども、競合対立候補に関して、高市氏、河野氏、それぞれが原子力に関して相反する見方をしています。高市氏は、さらなる原子力発電所が必要であるといい、河野氏は、もうこれ以上はいらない、むしろ原子力は段階的に廃止していく方向だとおっしゃってますけれども、先生は、どの立場なんでしょうか。
はい、私は原子力は当面必要だと思っています。2050年、カーボンニュートラル、大きな目標を私も共有いたしますが、そのためにはクリーンエネルギーを用意しなければならない。しかしながら、再生可能エネルギー一本足打法では、現実のこのエネルギーの価格、安定供給、さまざまな課題に応えることはできない。よって選択肢として原子力は残さなければならないと思っています。
Well, I believe that for the time being, nuclear energy will be required. There is this policy of 2050 carbon neutral, and I do share this objective. And for this reason, we must prepare clean energy. And relying just on renewable energy alone is not enough. Such a one-legged approach is not enough because of the energy price as well as a stable supply. We need to have more options, and that is the reason why I think that we will need to have nuclear power for the time being.
Okay, my next question, Kishida Sensei. This is very personal because you come from Hiroshima and you have been foreign minister of this country. Do you think you did enough as foreign minister, and would you do more in order to Japan to sign the Treaty of Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons?
はい、最後、個人的な質問になりますけれども、広島、出身でいらっしゃるということで、選挙区が広島ということで、そして外務大臣も務められたという立場から、外務大臣として、十分、この日本がこの核兵器禁止条約に署名するという方向に向けて、十分な努力をされたというふうに思っていらっしゃいますでしょうか。
はい、まず結論として、今、日本は核廃絶に向けて努力を続けています。これは現実的な対応であると思っています。核禁条約は核兵器のない世界を目指す、私も広島出身です。この大きな目標を共有していますが、この目的のために出口にあたる大変重要な条約であると認識をしています。しかしながら、この核禁条約には核兵器国どこも参加をしていません。日本は核兵器国を核禁条約に近づける努力をする、こういった責務が唯一の戦争被爆国としてあると信じています。
Well, first of all, to give you the conclusion, of course, Japan is continuing to work hard so as to realize abolition of nuclear weapons. And so we are trying to take a realistic approach. And so, of course, this nuclear ban treaty and the nuclear weapon ban treaty, this is aiming towards a world which is free of nuclear weapons. I am from Hiroshima, and I do share this objective. And at the exit, of course, this is an important treaty to realize this final objective. But in the meantime, we have to recognize that none of the nuclear powers have signed this treaty. So first, we need to get these nuclear powers to come close to supporting this treaty. And eventually, we should try to realize this objective.
私は、外務大臣時代にこの核廃絶問題、ライフワークとして臨みましたが、現実、核兵器を持っているのは核兵器国です。この国を動かさない限りは現実は変わらない、こうした悔しい思いを何度となくいたしました。よって、自らが核禁条約にどう向き合うのか、これは大事なことですが、日本、唯一の戦争被爆国であるということを言うんであるならば、具体的に核兵器国を動かしてこそ、その責任を果たすと信じています。唯一の同盟国であるアメリカをはじめ、核兵器国を動かす努力をしていくことが、私たちに課せられた責任だと思っています。
Yes, and when I was foreign minister, have set out this abolition of the nuclear weapons as my life work, and I worked hard for this objective. But in reality, it was not possible to try to change the attitude of the nuclear powers, those who are in possession of these nuclear weapons. So I have been disappointed, and I have felt a frustration a number of times during that time. And so as the only A-bomb victim on Earth, we as a responsible, as a country, needs to be responsible for trying to change the attitude of these nuclear powers. As, for example, the United States, our ally, we need to try to approach these countries, countries which are in possession of nuclear weapons, and this is the responsibility, I believe, of Japan.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And we made a promise with Mr. Ishida to let him go at 3 o'clock sharp. He has other public engagement after this. So I'm going to have to wrap up, and I apologize for not being able to take everyone's questions. Questions from everyone. And last of all, Mr. Kishida, I wonder if you're willing to take answer this question. Would you be willing to make a promise that you will appear once you have become Prime Minister to FCCJ? Past 2 Prime Ministers hasn't come here, and we are so disappointed. But would you be the first Prime Minister in 3 generations to appear at FCCJ?
いうふうにお約束したので、最後に一つだけ。
Would you be willing to answer questions? And if you say yes, I will give you this 1-year guest membership.
はい、すみません、FCCJ 総理大臣になられた暁にはぜひ来てくださるとお約束くだされば、この1年間の特別会員権を渡したいと思います。残念ながら過去2人来ていただけなかったので、はい、ぜひ来てください。お約束ください。
はい、もちろん約束いたします。
I promise。
はい、それでは、はい、ありがとうございます。はい、いただきました。はい、すみません。